Hello and welcome to the Move Me Brightly podcast. My name's Tom. I'm here with my co-host Blaine. Hi, Blaine.
Hello.
Together we have over 32 years of combined experience in the creative industry, and it hasn't been easy. We've had to put in long hours, climb the ranks, and do the jobs nobody wanted to do, all in hopes of one day living our dreams of living creative lives with creative careers. But you know what we discovered? Living the creative life you always wanted isn't all it's cracked up to be. Every day is full of inspiration, creative problem solving, and that can lead to burnout. This podcast explores the way in which top people in the creative industry move forward in a career they love while finding new ways to infuse creativity into their lives and work and keep that creative passion alive. Join us weekly as we have those conversations and walk away with nuggets we could all use to stave off burnout and continue to produce better and better work. And also just come hang out with us because it's going to be fun.
Did you hear about that American Airlines flight that had
diarrhea epidemic?
Yes, they called it a biohazard.
Not only did I hear about it, but someone took a video of it, like the empty plane, to show the chaos.
Send that to me.
I think I saw it on Twitter somewhere. I'll have to search for it. But yeah, it was just everything was like matted down, and the entire like walkway was like covered in shit. And like all the seats and stuff like that.
Well, so all the seats?
A lot of seats. Yeah.
Oh my God. I obviously try to picture it in my head for a while. And you had to know, is he walking down the aisle and it's just following him or her? I don't know. Or is it like during takeoff, they had an accident in their seat, which then spread throughout the plane?
I don't know. I don't know if it was like, was it one person in contagion caught on, or was it something in the airplane that led to it?
Contagion caught on.
Yeah, like did like someone like spike the meals with laxatives, or like all the drinks with laxatives or something like that?
Oh.
You know? Because I feel like I can't imagine. Well, like, how does one person lead to everyone else having explosive diarrhea?
Was it a whole plane?
Pretty much. Yeah. Like it caught on to multiple people. So it wasn't just one person who had it.
Oh God, so I read that, and we're going to Italy next week. And I was like, Jimmy, I mean, that's one of my biggest fears. I have this like irrational fear that I'm going to be the person that makes us land the plane via some type of like vomiting, diarrhea situation, or having a heart attack. You know, my fear of heart attacks. And I can usually, on like a 3 to 4 hour flight, I can just be like, you're being insane. You're being insane. You're being insane. But I haven't flown to Europe in a really long time, and I'm nervous about it. And I'm like, Jimmy, like, diarrhea news came out at the worst possible time. But I was hoping just he had a little stomach bug, not knowing the whole
I mean, maybe it's because the plane uses all the recycled air from within the plane. So maybe like the particles got into the vents and people like swallowed them or something.
Jesus. Or maybe one person had diarrhea and the smell was so bad that other people just started vomiting.
Yeah, but I think it was diarrhea. I think multiple people got diarrhea specifically, which is really weird. I've never heard of that before. Like, I've heard of mass vomiting.
Yes.
But mass shitting is a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole different. And I heard the pilot talking about it, and he's like, we've had a biohazard. And I'm like, what? He was like, diarrhea down the aisle. But like I was saying to Jimmy, like, diarrhea is so much more comforting than like we've had an anthrax discovery. Or
yeah.
Like, you know,
you're not going to die from diarrhea.
Right. Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
But man, Montezuma's revenge, though.
Yeah. And I mean, being stuck in an airplane with that smell, though, good God.
Good God.
That is so bad. But yeah, it
It's
definitely wasn't a diarrhea where the person made it to the toilet. That for sure did not happen.
for sure. But I didn't know it was more than one person. I'm gonna have to research this. And then, so I can like barely eat. I have such a fear of like food contamination. A real big fear of mine. It all stems from my fear of vomiting. But the other night, there's a new documentary on Netflix about like prosecutors who prosecute E. coli in food, doing a rundown of all the things at the grocery store they can't eat. And I, just like an emotional cutter, put the documentary on. And I've already read some stuff about that, like don't eat cut fruit or different things that can be contaminated. And I put it on, and the first minute goes by and Jimmy walked in, and I was like, he's like, what's going on? I was like, show about food contamination. And he was like, thank God I walked in. Turn it off. Shut down.
Ignorance is bliss, Blaine. Remember that.
I know.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Move Me Brightly podcast. We are on episode 6, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe even 7, because we did a 2-parter with our previous guest, Leon, which was great. I hope you all enjoyed that. We had a great guest today. We just finished up interviewing Kausar Mohammed, who's a fantastic actress and a writer, someone I've worked with in the past, just a lovely, lovely person. Blaine, what did you think about Kausar?
I really enjoyed her thoughtfulness and intelligence and the way she thought about life. I was really impressed by her.
Yeah. Very, very intelligent, well-spoken lady, very beautiful woman. She is such a joy. As someone who has worked with her and been on set with her, I give the highest recommendation to this person. If anybody out there is looking for an actress, please reach out. Kausar is incredible. You will have such a fun time with her on set. And yeah, we get into it a little bit. We talk about her origins, what made her start to act, what made her kind of fall out of love and then back into love with acting, the other things that she does to keep her creative juices flowing, especially right now. We're in the middle of a SAG-AFTRA strike, which doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon. So we get into not necessarily the projects that she's doing, but what she's doing now while times are a little lean, like they are for so many of us out in Hollywood right now, which I think is a really good glimpse into the process of someone who is an active union member currently dealing with a strike. So we do touch into that a little bit. And I think just in general, for me personally, it was a great excuse to catch up with an old friend. Kausar is very talented. She's done a lot of work in the industry already, and to me, I think she's somebody who's just like destined for greatness. Like she's going to be a household name before, maybe even before this episode airs in 4 days. Who knows? But she's so talented and so incredible and so humble and so generous. And we hope you all enjoyed the episode. It is a very good one. All right, everybody. Welcome once again to the Move Me Brightly podcast. My name's Tom. I'm here with my co-host, Blaine. Hi, Blaine.
Hello.
And today we have the amazing actor, Kausar Mohammed. Hello, Kausar.
Hello, everyone.
Kausar is fantastic. She and I have worked together before on a previous project. She is also from CW's The Flash, where she played a super nerd. A doctor.
Yes.
Yeah. She was also in Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, which I know is on Netflix. How many seasons of that have been going on at this point?
That was like, gosh, 4 or 5?
4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Which is rare for Netflix.
Go ahead.
You get me on 2. That's incredible. And then also on the Nickelodeon show Monster High, which I, as a 38-year-old, want to watch, even though I know it's a Nickelodeon show. But anything with the name Monster in it, as you can see by all my monster tattoos, that's like right up my alley. Yeah. So welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you're here.
Yeah, so glad to be here.
So the idea behind this podcast, and we'll have, this is kind of just like a free-flowing chat, we'll talk about whatever, but the general thesis statement I would say behind the podcast is talking to creative people like yourself. Blaine and I are also in creative industries who kind of transferred their creative passion into their career, the thing that they do to make money, and any potential burnout that comes with that. Like, do you kind of lose on some level the original passion that you had, where when you were a kid you just loved acting or performing in plays and were like, if I could do this, this would be my dream, and now it's actually reality? And how does that affect your adult life? And if so, do you find other ways to channel that creativity into other avenues that necessarily don't make you money but fulfill you in those ways that this initial passion did when you were a child? And I'll speak to myself first, just to give you an example. I always wanted to be a writer. That was my biggest thing. I always wanted to work in the movie industry. That was my goal. That was my love. And then I did it, and it's great. I love it. But I've noticed that there are days when I'm working on multiple projects at once and putting in long hours. The thing I used to love doing, my favorite hobby in the world, is go to the movie theater. And after working in this field, there are certain days where I finish work and that's the last thing on my mind. Like the last thing, the last thing I want to do is go see a movie at that point. And so I personally have channeled it into more like learning guitar, learning how to play drums, stuff like that, other creative outlets that are really just for me. I have no intention of joining a band or touring the world as a drummer. Like I'm not good enough, but B, like, that's just not the goal with that. It's more just another outlet. So my question for you is, when did you start with acting? When did you know it was the thing you wanted to do? And kind of where do things stand now that you've kind of realized that dream?
Yeah, that is such a good, like, the idea of the burnout and the process of it, that is so real. And I feel like we don't talk about that enough either, of what it means to be able to be like, oh, I'm pursuing the creative thing as the full-time everything. And acting for me was something that I did in theater growing up. But when I went to college, I couldn't imagine an actual life following it through. I think also just not having seen other South Asian folks in represent like on screen as much. There was very limited choices of people to look up to. So I just didn't think it could have been a thing. But then I had some distance in it from college and got re-involved with the comedy scene in college, and made me be like, oh, I do love this. And I think that's sort of been a recurring theme of like the distance. When I am able to have distance is when I am able to be like, oh, okay, I love it again. Because it's so easy to get burnt out on it. And I think often when I talk to people who are like entering the acting field, and my biggest takeaway to them is always, yeah, you need distance. Like, don't burn out, because it's so easy to be like, I have to be in every improv class. I have to be in every acting study class. I have to make my own stuff and shoot it and produce it, and then find a whole team. It's like there's always an endless amount of things to do, because I think also in our creative paths, input doesn't necessarily equal output. It's a lot of it is also a matter of time, and things are out of our control a lot of the time. So it's like, I don't know if y'all would relate to this, but for me, it's like when I am in that position where I don't have things in my control, my thing to do is to try to do everything. But then that also leads to burnout. So I think that really resonates a lot. And I think that's also like why writing has in the past couple of years has been sort of like a little bit of a godsend, but then I end up burning myself out on writing too. And then it's like, oh, acting is the fun. Anyways, it's a whole life is a seesaw.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, you say that, and I think what you spoke to very briefly anyway is the idea of like an outsider's perspective looking in on this industry when they talk about like an overnight success, right? Yeah. They like see some actor who has one role and then suddenly they're in 5 roles the following year. And as an audience member, you're thinking like, where did this person come from? They just like plucked them off the street. And what they don't see is that input that a lot of people are taking into it. I always notice that when you see an overnight success, in quotes, I use that term, like they have been grinding for so long, going to every single audition in the world, learning sides, learning everything, taking every type of acting class and process camp that they can do. And I know, like, as a producer, which was not my initial goal in this industry, something I kind of fell into and realized I love when I first started, my thought was like, I have to say yes to every job that comes my way as a producer. And it was for multiple reasons. One was because I didn't go to school for producing, so I'm kind of a fraud and I don't really know what I'm doing.
You're also a damn good producer, by the way. One of the best producers I've ever worked with. So
well, thank you. I wasn't fishing, but I'll take it. But like that was kind of my thought process, was I have to take every single job that is offered to me, A, to get the experience, and B, because I don't want to put myself in a position where the phone stops ringing and people stop calling me because they don't know if I will be available for them.
Yeah.
And there was a period where that led to me being so overworked and so burnt out, where like I couldn't keep straight which project I was working on a particular day, and finally reached a point where I had to be like, I need to step back and take a little breather here and kind of focus on like what's important to me, what type of jobs do I really want to work on, like what really matters, like what are the films that A, either fall in line with what I would like to see,
right,
or B, have some type of societal message or impact, or has some type of advancement in the industry that, as a very straight, very white guy, I am not really representing. But like, what can I do to kind of help facilitate those projects forward if possible, you know? And it was kind of like a learning process of going through that initial burnout, which I think is also sometimes necessary, and maybe we don't talk about too, is that sometimes I think you have to reach that stage of burnout to really take a step back and understand and narrow your focus of like what really matters to you. Like, you've got the big thing, you've got the acting, right? But now what do you want to get out of it? And then kind of narrowing that through trial and error, or whatever it may be, I think is something too.
Totally. And I feel like it's the process of learning your boundaries, and you can only go through it once you've like been through it. Though I will say, I feel like now the idea of boundaries is something more commonly accepted and discussed. So I would hope most people don't have to go through burnout, but I know that was definitely my process as well, of like being at the point of where I'm like, what am I doing? Nothing matters. It all feels the same. And why am I not happy? And then being like, oh, it's because I have to be present enough to enjoy it. My plate can't be so full. I like can't carry it. So I very much agree with that.
Yeah. Boundaries is an interesting topic too, because I think it is much more commonplace, and I would say, like, for lack of a better phrase, like therapy language has become much more commonplace and out in the open, which I think is great. I also, maybe I'm just going to go on a little tangent here, I apologize, but I also feel like that can sometimes be weaponized to excuse like shitty behaviors and shitty people, you know? I feel like once it becomes common lingo, and you don't necessarily have to be a person who's been in therapy to understand the terminology of someone who's been in therapy, it can become an excuse to allow a bad person to be a bad person, and use words in a way where like, okay, I can't really say no to you because you're saying these are your boundaries and I have to respect that, but you're also saying they're your boundaries, which is why you won't date like white women. And like, that's just kind of, I don't know, that's just kind of weird, but anyway, that's a side tangent, totally unrelated to this point.
No, but I was actually just talking to a friend about this too, where it's like, it's one thing, I'm a huge advocate for therapy and a huge advocate for, like those that self work, and it's a continuous practice, but totally therapy in particular, and self-care language, or language around like consciousness, gets totally weaponized in terms of like using the words, but not actually be willing to do the work, or like accountability for the work. I think like, it's like, okay, if that is the balance, like to engage in true practices of like giving and taking and boundary setting and respect and accountability, it's like such a two-way street. And often I think today more than ever, it gets weaponized to sort of not really actually, it becomes like a scapegoat to not actually do the work. Which
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was gonna say, and like on a different tangent, I feel like there's parallels to that of I guess like language around um like racial understandings and like, like what does it mean to be an ally? What does it mean to be an anti-racist? Where it's like you can use the words, but like what do they actually mean and what's the work behind the words? So that's my own tangent, but agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a tangent actually
Yes,
on this
please,
topic. So this is actually my second podcast, and I have another one that I'm no longer doing, but I started it and modeled it after Armchair Expert, which is run by Dak Shepard. And he is a recovering addict and has done all of this therapy and AA work and is like very skilled in the language of AA. So by listening to his podcast, he would always say like, blah, blah, blah is so triggering for me. And I was like, my God, what a great thing. And now I use it all the time. And it's such a nice little shortcut to like, oh, I don't want to go to that because it reminds me of that. And I had a bad experience with this thing. Da, 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 da. And so now I'm just like, to my husband, if I don't want to do something, I'm like, that's very triggering to me.
I want to go grocery shopping. That's triggering.
It's that's triggering to me.
Yeah.
So you're the problem. You're what Kausar and I are talking about.
But she knows she's the problem. So
That's
it's all
true.
good.
That's true.
I'm sorry, I can't come to your gallery opening. It's triggering for me.
It's triggering.
And people are just like, oh, well, of course. Yeah.
It's triggering to me as a person who has done gallery openings themselves. Yeah, of course.
It's triggering.
It reminds me of my own success, and I don't like that. I'm very humble. So this is very triggering for me.
Right.
You guys might want to back pocket that though. It's a nice little
get what you want.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll say that next time I have to go to work.
Right.
Work is triggering.
But high key that is the most triggering thing.
Yeah, it's true. And also still pay me. Like you have to still pay me. This is a mental health thing. This is triggering for me. So like we all understand what's going on here, right? You're gonna keep paying me while I stay triggered.
I'm on disability.
Yeah.
For triggering.
And all those things are real. The disability is real. The people being triggered and activated is totally real. But I know, like, I totally,
this just is not
funny.
real.
It's yes. And that's, I love that we're acknowledging that.
All of our examples are not real at all, including Blaine's. Sorry, Blaine. You mentioned being South Asian, and I want to ask about that again, because you are speaking to two Caucasian people. And I know that for me, as someone who moved to LA and tried to make their way into the industry, initially it was very tough because I didn't know anybody, right? So like Sarah, my co-producer, who you both know, we had a feature script that we really liked and we were trying to ship it out, and we just had zero contacts in the industry. And it took us winning a grant from a film festival to get some attention, and then eventually the movie got made. But that was my only barrier. Like there was no one ever said to me, like, we're looking for a script with a more female perspective, or we would really love to have a Black writer on this script, or whatever. Like there was never any question about my race or my gender that affected me getting work in Hollywood. And that's just my experience, and it is what it is. But I wanted to ask you about that because you also mentioned you had a little doubt when you were in college, not seeing that representation on screen, which I know like some minor steps have been made over the past few years in Hollywood to start not totally rectifying that, but to bring more representation out into the world. But how was that when you were getting started? Was it a thing where you were really looking for roles that were defined as your demographic? Were you auditioning for more generic, could be anybody type of roles, and you found pushback because of where you came from? What was the experience like for you?
Yeah, I think that's super real. And so I think when I first started auditioning more regularly, it definitely was the thing of there's only like a small pocket of, because it's like, I think that's part of the talks around like the privilege and the not privilege, or when, like I've like had other like white actors I've talked to or stuff, like, been like, yeah, but all the roles now are only diverse, so I don't get any roles. And it's like, yeah, but you still could, you're always going to be brought into the room for everything, versus when my experience has been like, as a person of color, it's like you would only get access to the role that says that it's going to be for someone of color or your ethnicity specifically. Like, to me, walk in and audition for a white role would not be a thing if it says Caucasian at all, unless it was like an open role, which I have been seeing more and more often. And I think also the other thing was, starting out, it was I had access to smaller roles like co-stars and one-liners, and those don't necessarily offer for a fuller fleshed character. It's going to offer for someone who's usually there maybe to do a quick job, to say a quick line, and often can fall more into the stereotype category. So I feel like it was when I was auditioning for co-stars and that sort of thing, where it was like, oh, okay, the woman in the hijab, which is fine. That's fine. But like, what else is there access to? Or, the person with the accent, or, the IT tech, those sort of things. And I think what I'm optimistic about, and I feel like what has changed a little bit, is having access to other roles where there are more fuller fleshed characters, and where they might be like, okay, this role is open, anyone can audition. And also, like, it might still be like a Muslim woman in hijab, but she's also queer, and she's also, like, I don't know, a badass race car driver. So it's like more nuanced the bigger the roles get, and for that I'm excited. And I think it's also, while there's still a lot of work to go, and while I think the cis white experience is still at the forefront of our media and television, personally, in the past couple of years, I feel like what has been available has opened up, and I'm hopeful that it will continue to open up, because I really do believe that the diversity makes for better stories.
Yeah, 100%. I have two things to say in response to that. And one is, when you talk about reading for a potential role to audition for, one thing I noticed, and I didn't notice it until I was older, but as a child, I used to love writing screenplays. I used to just write them on Microsoft Word, and I learned how to format scripts by going to like Borders Books and buying screenplays.
Oh, wow.
Right? From older movies from the 80s and 90s. My mom would take me to the bookstore. She would let me buy a screenplay. I would read it and learn the format and write it that way. And one thing I didn't notice as a child, which I also think is very interesting because it conditions you to think a certain way, is when I would read those scripts, when they would describe a character, if they were talking about a white character, they would just say their age.
Yeah.
If they were talking about a black character, it would say like Omar Black 37. Right. But if Omar was supposed to be white, it would just say Omar 37.
Right. Like that's the default.
Yes, white becomes the default, and it just conditions you to think that when you're reading. If you don't get a signifier telling you otherwise, that person is white.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about it. That's so true. Even when I read script generally now, unless they have an identifier, I will assume that it's like it's meant to be a certain thing.
Yeah.
But oh no, sorry.
No, please.
No, I was gonna say, and like I think as a writer now, I try to make every specific character, like very specifically, like name who they are and what they are, as an attempt to protect it if it were to go out of my hands. So like if it were to like go up the chain to another whatever company or producer or director, at least I can be like, no, that ethnicity was the writer's choice. So you have to think.
And I've also noticed now a lot on scripts, there'll be a little character page before the screenplay starts that will signify. So if you don't see descriptions in the actual screenplay, like if it is nondescript, they will put in front, like this could be any race,
right?
Open, So there's that signifier as well. Like, do not assume I mean white when I don't say Black, Indian, Arab, whatever. Like this is for anybody who can do the role, which I think is great. I think that's a big improvement based on the screenplays I used to make. And then the other thing I wanted to say, because this is an experience I hold near and dear to my heart and will probably always remember, is Kausar and I worked on this project called Brown Elephant
Mhm.
in December of 2021. And it was for this holiday themed series that 20th Digital and Hulu put out. And in this story, Kausar plays this overeager daughter of this Muslim family who celebrates their version of White Elephant, the holiday exchange
Oh,
party.
clever.
And then they call it Brown Elephant. And Kausar
Yeah.
plays this character who's like way too intense about the gift giving. Like she fights her family and stuff. So they hold an intervention for it. It's a really cute, funny story. Everyone should watch it. But I remember we did a pre-production kickoff call once. And it was Kausar, it was Fazia Mirza, who was the director, my producing partner, Sarah, and then a bunch of the department heads. And Kausar, Faz, Sarah, and myself had a group chat, the group text that we were doing while we were making the production. And it was probably like 12 or 13 of us on the call. And then after the call, you, Faz, and Sarah on the group chat were just gushing. You were all over the moon because you said, I remember this so distinctly, you all said, have you guys ever been part of a production call where it was all women of color? Like everybody, every department, every cast member, everybody was filled with women of color except for me. And so the three of you were all just kind of like, yeah, you three were just going back and forth like, that was the coolest thing, like progress, this is so great, like I can't believe this actually happened. And I was just like, yeah.
It's a part of it. We need,
way to go, girls. But
Yeah.
it was so fascinating too, because that was really my, and I don't say this to make light of it, but it was the only time I ever experienced being the minority in a room.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, it's obviously in no way comparable to actually being a real minority, but like, it was the only time where I didn't really notice it in the moment, but after in the chat, I was like, oh yeah, I was the only white person in that room. That's really fucking fascinating to have that the table flipped in that way. And obviously, like, I think the biggest difference is you all handled it with such grace and welcomeness and open arms. So like I felt good about it. Like I was honored to be a part of that. But it was just such a unique, fascinating experience that I hope we see more of in the future.
And I think the reason why the partnership works so well, because I feel like it was such a great team, was because that like we were like clear with what we wanted and how that was a goal of ours from the beginning, and it was received so well and supported as well. I think there were multiple times, Tom, where you were the one to be like, oh, but they're not a woman of color, you know, like you were advocating for it as well too, because you know it does take intentionality, because the world, you know, typically our industry, not to say there's not a vast array of POC and women of color talent out there, but it does take a little bit of intentionality to piece, like to fit those pieces together, because so often there'll be the like handful of you know POC folks on a predominantly white set, because Hollywood is a predominantly white institution as a whole. So it takes intentionality, and you were a part of building out that intentionality and that sort of like value alignment. So yeah, I was really, looking back, like really proud of what we created and what we were able to do there.
Speaking of intentionality, now that you have had the success that you've had, how intentional are you in being a role model for people younger than you? Do you take that like very seriously and make specific actions doing that? Or are you just like, I'm being me and I did this and I'm just going to tell my story kind of?
Yeah. I feel like in terms of the success thing, I feel like I'm still like so much to learn, and I have people that I really look up to, and truly the way I think of it is like I feel so blessed to have had a certain like a handful of really great mentors, as I've been trying to figure out what are my own successes and who I still look up to actively. So I 100% feel like it's my duty and a responsibility to give that back to other you know, younger folks who are entering the industry as well. And I think that also is another set of like intentionality things that need to be done. Like, for example, well, there's this program called Unlock Her Potential for all women of color. I would highly recommend it. Started by one of my mentors, Sophia Chang, who's like brilliant, this like brilliant Asian American woman, who was one of the OGs of like when like basically was like an OG manager of a lot of really great hip hop artists, but then she's also like a brilliant writer and artist and creative in so many forms. Long spiel, all that to say, the whole organization, its crux is that, you know, like if we give women of color mentors, like that's how change happened. That's how, because I feel like the idea of passing on information and taking someone under their wing is also a more implicit thing when it is implicit thing, like to pass on to folks who have already like had that privilege. So, you know, like a white CEO promoting another white person. And I'm like, okay, well, like, how do we do that for people of color? Because I feel like that's where the change happens. And also when white folks can be mentoring people of color, and it's all like there's an intentional outreach to bring people in and bring people up. So I try to do my part. I try to have people that, and there are like a handful of folks that I like really want to see succeed and know they can succeed, and do my best to support them. And but they're also brilliant. You know, I don't know how much help I can actually be, but I try.
I've really found that in my own life that like really the most beautiful thing you can do is just reach a hand down to someone who needs a hand and like bring them up to be with you. That's happened to me maybe 3 or 4 times. And it's always like something that you want to pass on, that I certainly want to pass on if I ever have the opportunity. Just what a kindness.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I 100% agree with you. It's like in those moments where it's like, God, I wish I had someone to help me or to like pull me up, and then and then you find that person, and so I feel like it's only natural to be like, yeah, I want to pass that on.
Yeah.
Blaine and I have talked about this in a previous episode, and I think we're on the same page, but there's no greater feeling than helping another person succeed or achieve their dreams. Like being able to be a part of that in some small way, I think is better than any personal success I may have. Like I know, for example, there's one crew member that I always hire, who started off just as a PA, like third PA on a project, promoted to second PA, key PA, and then on this last job I did in August, she was the second AD. And just seeing her like climb through the ranks from her own hard work, and like she continuously gives me credit, like, thank you so much for giving me these opportunities. And I keep having to remind her, like, this is all you. Like, you are knocking it out of the park every time I bring you on a job. Like, you deserve this and more. Like, you are going to be running Hollywood one day. And if anything, I'm just securing my spot. So when you make it all the way to the top, you remember like who gave you that first jump, you know? But like it's such a satisfying feeling. Like I remember being on set for that. We were doing overnights up in Santa Clarita, and it was a bigger cast. It was like 10 or 12 people. And she was the second AD for it. And so for those of you listening who may not know, second AD works directly with the first AD, who kind of monitors the schedule, make sure things are running on time. But the second AD primarily is in charge of the actors, making sure they have eyes on the actors at all time, can give ETAs on how much longer they're going to be in makeup and in wardrobe, when they're going to come to set, stuff like that, handle all the paperwork for them, everything. So you really have to build a relationship with your talent as a second AD. And this person had never done that before. And so I told her, like, you know, this is a little different game. Like, I'll run you through what's to be expected. But I trust you. Like, I know you'll do a good job. And then I was just sitting there on the overnight, just watching her just absolutely kill it. Like, just do so good at the job she was given for the first time ever. And I was just sitting in the back, like a proud dad. Like, like there were so many moments where I wanted to like go over to her and be like, by the way, just remember this. I'm like, no, like, you don't have to do that. She's got this. Like, let her like spread her wings and fly kind of moment. And it was like, it was the most satisfying thing of that entire production for me, was watching that like growth from that person, you know? And I think like you can't really, for me anyway, like you can't really put into words what that feeling is, versus like for me, the satisfaction of producing another project and like putting it in the can under budget. Like that's great, but that's what I do. That's my job, you know? But like being able to foster other people who have that passion in this industry, and to know like, oh, I was a part of them, like not only getting like breaking their way into the industry and working their way up, but like seeing them have joy from it, because you're kind of like fostering an environment that's pleasant. And like, because they easily could have been successful in any way they started, but maybe they would have had a boss who sucked.
Right.
And like really belittled and made them shitty and burnt them out on the industry and made them want to leave. And so there's like this pride of knowing like, oh, I made this experience good for them, where they're like excited to come to work, you know? And I feel like that's the closest I'll ever get to being a dad.
We don't know that. We don't know.
Well, we don't know, but we know. We know. My goal is to eventually adopt. And when I adopt, I mean, I will adopt someone who just graduated Harvard Law.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, congrats on the degree. Do you need a dad?
Yeah.
Right before you pass the bar. Right
It's
before you
like
pass the bar.
the
And then I'll be like, it was all me.
The terrible thing that's happening with The Blind Side, which I'm heartbroken about because I love that movie.
Wait. Oh, what happened in the movie?
What's the background there?
This white family from Mississippi adopted like a teenage black teenager who they taught to be really good at football, and then apparently like pressured him to going to Ole Miss, and then I'm butchering this so bad, but made him sign something so that they were in charge of him basically instead of adopting him. And then he got drafted to the NFL, and he ended up having to like give them all of this money. And then they sold the story, wrote the book, sold the story. It became The Blind Side, the movie. Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for it. Yeah. And he's like now come out with like that he was like a victim in this whole thing. Just
that's awful.
And people are asking Sandra Bullock to give her Oscar back.
Interesting.
Because the story wasn't true. Or
well, that would be like she still acted just fine. I mean,
exactly.
You're going after the wrong people here. That's what I would say. You're going after the wrong.
Did you forget the parents? Yeah. Who exploited this kid? But I also think if she's going to get rid of the Oscar, if she decides to sell it and give the money to the kid.
Exactly. Like I'd be like, yeah.
The opposite side of that coin is that like without those people literally taking that kid into their home and teaching him how to play football, and you know, they got him a tutor, they did all of this stuff, they gave him every single opportunity so that he could go to college. Like he never would have gone to college, he never would have learned to play football, he wouldn't be in the position he's in, which obviously doesn't give them the right to do what they did, but it's a murky situation.
I don't even think it's that murky, because if you're that child and you know you were just a pawn,
exploited
the entire time, no matter what benefit you personally got out of it that you can use later on in life, like that's gonna stay with you forever.
Yeah,
that'll never leave you, of knowing like those were not my parents.
Yep.
Yeah.
You
know? And I also feel like the racial implications of that as well. I feel like if you can't ignore the fact that it was a white family adopting a black son and then putting him into football. So it's like, okay, like there's a little aspect of it that's like a little bit Jordan Peele, Get Out, like that. There's another version of that. That's a movie, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like,
especially because it wasn't just any black kid. He was like 6'6". Like he was, he was like genetically programmed to be a great football player. Like he had the build for it too. So they plucked him for that reason as well.
I don't know the whole story, so like I should.
Well, I know, Blaine, I apologize because I know you said you like that movie, but to me, I'm almost not surprised because those white savior movies are ugh. Ugh. I'm just not a fan. Like Blind Side,
we're past
The Help, Green Book. Ugh. I don't like I'm like, who are these for? I guess they're for Blaine.
But
okay, in my defense, that movie was filmed at my high school with I was a football trainer, meaning I like wrapped people's legs and did athletic football training for my high school football team. And so like the coach that I worked for was the same coach in the movie. So I had a lot of nostalgia, and it was filmed in Atlanta. I mean, I had different connections to it, but
totally. And I think like a different time too. Like I remember when I watched The Help, I thought it was great. And then, you know, the cultural zeitgeist around it changes and you're like, oh yeah, we were there as a society.
Yes. I just saw that.
Okay, but we were there as a society.
I just watched the movie with Patrick Dempsey as the he was like the maid of honor. I think it's called Man of Honor or something like that. It's an old rom-com. And there were things that happened in that movie that it was like, I can't even believe that this is like put on a screen. It's so, and it was only made 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Right.
How much progress has been made in the last 15 years versus like the 15 years prior to that, you know?
Totally. Like
I just saw.
Oh no, go ahead.
I just saw Les Mis at the Pantages in Hollywood, Les Miserables, and my favorite musical. I've seen it a bunch. And there's this line where Thénardier, who's like the sleazy landlord in the show. I don't know if either of you know the show at all.
It's my favorite. I've seen it like 100 times.
Yeah. Well, Thénardier plays this scumbag who like adopts this young girl just to make money off of her, and then Jean Valjean, the main character, takes the daughter away, buys the daughter off of him, basically. And Thénardier has this scene at the end when the young girl, now grown up, is getting married, and they crash the wedding, and he's like commenting on all the rich people in the wedding. And there's one line where initially in the story he says, "This one's a queer, but what can you do?" And it used to get a big laugh.
Yeah.
And I just watched it last week, and they changed the line to "This one's a queer, maybe I'll try it too." And then he like pulls the guy in and kisses him. And I was like,
love it.
Yeah, and I was so fascinated by that because like I get why they did it.
Yeah.
Because the times are changing. But in my head, I was also like, this guy is portrayed as a sleazy scumbag. So like, this one's a queer, but what can you do is almost like, that's so in line with that particular character. Whereas I feel like a lot of old comedies that used to have homophobic jokes, they would just be homophobic for the sake of being homophobic. Like it had no character connection at all. It was just used as a punchline.
Yeah.
Right. So I just thought that was really interesting to be like, wow, Les Mis a story that takes place 200 years ago.
Right.
A tale as old as time, you may say.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, like things changing as it goes. That is an interesting thing of like, if the character is supposed to be a homophobic asshole, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But like, I recently learned like the original versions of, I don't know if y'all have heard this, like of the Willy Wonka stories actually being incredibly racist. And of course, like I should fact check because I saw this. I did like a minor deep dive on it, but not
scan.
So, fact check me, please. Don't take anything I said for fact. Like, yeah. But the idea that like the original versions of Roald Dahl's Willy Wonka were actually incredibly racist. Like the Oompa Loompas were like written in to be not just like these little short creatures he found, but literally it was written in that Willy Wonka had brought over the Oompa Loompas from Africa. And then later versions of the book took that out, thank God. But it is interesting to see the ways that media and like whether it's books or TV and film, like how is it going to adapt to the times? Because even when you think about some of the sitcoms that were like so popular 15 years ago,
Friends.
Like Friends.
There are so many homophobic jokes in Friends. It's unbelievable. I just watched that with my daughter.
And no black people in Friends.
Yeah.
Yes, there was.
It was like
Ross dated a black woman who's a scientist.
Okay, one doesn't count.
There was, but
that's literally tokenism, Blaine.
Okay, but she had like a fairly long stint on the show. I just watched the whole thing, so I did,
Yeah, but still minimal.
You clocked a black.
There was one.
Yeah.
But the homophobia was rampant.
Well, that's not surprising too, what you're saying, Kausar, because Roald Dahl is a world-renowned racist in real life.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which sucks, because I love his, stories.
He's dead, yes.
Because you said it in the present tense.
Well, I mean, his legacy lives on.
His legacy lives on. Okay, but how about, so I've also heard that. And then I also heard, I think, fact check this, but I thought that they were rewriting like many of his books, like the BFG was being rewritten and they were going to change his language on some things like that, and then it would never be in its like original form or whatever.
See, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with
I'm a
that.
little like,
what was being changed? You know, it depends, like if it's like hateful.
some of it I believe was hateful, and then some of it was racist.
Yeah.
But they wanted, those stories are like beloved, so they wanted to be able to keep them in schools.
Yeah.
But then they're rewriting them.
Yeah.
I don't know. That gets tricky. Like,
right.
You
What
know,
would it mean to just support other authors who aren't racist at all?
Yeah. But I think it's a weird, to me, that's kind of a weird gray area, because I feel like the onus on old works like that are problematic now, that I think the focus needs to be more on the education behind those stories. Like if you're a parent and you want a child to read this, you have to be present with them and teach them to understand like why this is okay and why this isn't. And like, and it's also an opportunity to teach them history, like not to excuse people who were racist 100 years ago, because there were plenty of people 100 years ago who weren't racist. You know, like that's also another excuse I dislike, of like, oh, well, we're just going to like dismiss every person from the past because they owned slaves. It's like, yeah, they were abolitionists, dude. Like people knew it was bad back then. That doesn't excuse it. But I think for me, I feel like it's an opportunity like to educate as much as anything. And I also think like if you're just gonna rewrite it, I don't know, just make a new story.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Another side of that too is like Langston Hughes. Like all of that beauty and that art was born from so much like hurt in his personal living situation. Well, you wouldn't rewrite that, but then like you have to know some of the background too. Like it's like you change one thing and then it's a butterfly effect, seemingly, it feels like, and then you lose. I feel like it's gray to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the belief, and I wouldn't say I'm so solid in this that I'm inflexible, but to me, works of art, historical works of art, act as artifacts as much as anything. And they're not necessarily for modern consumption to fit modern times and modern tastes. They're to represent what was. And you have this modern lens to view what was in the past. And I think it's one thing, say, if they wanted to, because I mean, people do that with like songs, right? Like there are plenty of kids bop music that take modern pop songs. Like I think WAP was called like Wings and Pizza or something like that. There's like a kid's version of Wet Ass Pussy, right? Like that stuff's fine because the original WAP still exists. So like if they wanted to modify BFG to make it palatable for kindergartners to read, and you can still rent or check out the original BFG at the library or buy it at Barnes and Noble or whatever, like I think that's fine. But if you're going for like a total replacement, is where I personally take issue with that, because I think those things do have value as artifacts to show us what things were like back then.
For sure.
Not necessarily like we want to keep the racist shit, but
right.
We want to know what existed back in the day.
I mean, we could also throw up there my favorite, To Kill a Mockingbird. You're gonna rewrite that, but I mean,
right. But I'm like definitely think like I feel like it's so interesting because yes, things are artifacts, and what's the boundary between like the creative, like preserving just what was and all that. But I feel like To Kill a Mockingbird is one of my favorite books, but maybe that's because we were able to intellectualize and we were able to be like, oh, like when I remember when we learned about it in class, we had a whole discussion about like what it would mean, and a whole discussion of what is it, I remember, I think the use of the N-word was in that book often. I
believe so.
And like it was like a whole discussion of because we would popcorn read, how do we address that when we come to that word? So it was like it was used to discuss, because I think by that point I was like in 9th grade. But when it comes to Roald Dahl, and it's like it's children's books like for a younger audience, I think it is important to void it of institutional oppressions so that, you know, like younger generations aren't retaught those institutional impressions at an age where they can't necessarily intellectualize it.
Right.
That's
So
a great
yeah.
point.
to me, that feels like a little bit of a difference, but I totally do hear the, you know, what's the boundary? So it almost makes you be like, okay, well then maybe Roald Dahl shouldn't be so beloved anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
that was my other thought too, is like, maybe we just don't need BFG in schools.
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of other good children's books
Right.
and more modern children's books that are out there. And just because the 50-year-old kindergarten teacher has a connection to that story doesn't mean they need to bring it into the next generation either.
Yeah.
You know,
I do love, like, I love the twits and I love like witches, but in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, like would I pass those on to my kids? I don't know.
Roald Dahl also, little factoid, because I read a book about it, was a spy for the British government during World War II.
Man,
Good Lord.
He lived in America and was clandestinely trying to recruit the US government to join the war effort before Pearl Harbor.
what a guy.
What a guy. What a complicated man. You
Right,
said
right.
you said a term that I'm kind of interested in. You said popcorn reading.
Yeah. Do
What
you
is
know
that?
It
No.
would be like, I'd be reading, I'd be like, da, 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 da. And then it would be like, Tom, you read. And then you'd have to pick up wherever I left off.
So you
Okay,
had to
but there
be
wasn't
like,
an actual like timer or anything like that that would go off randomly. It was just the teacher.
Or I think it'd be like by paragraph or like by page or something.
Okay. But you called it popcorn reading.
Yeah.
both my kids are deeply dyslexic, and I also believe that I'm dyslexic, but it was not caught. And
I believe it too.
Popcorn reading was my biggest fear in school. Reading aloud, I couldn't do it. And I would like mix up words like heat and pretty, or like, so, you know, something with similar words. And I was just like, oh God.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I used to love reading a lot.
I could see that.
I was very good at it.
I could see that.
But I
Good
can
for you.
totally imagine.
One of my
Oh no,
sorry, go ahead, Kausar. No.
No. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I was gonna ask, like, pardon my ignorance on this, but like, was dyslexia something more readily diagnosed at that time? Because I'm like, do you think your experience would have been easier knowing, like, hey, I'm not supposed to know this, you know, like.
I'm sure, but my best friend was diagnosed with it. So I think now we are so, as a society, like looking for dyslexia, like people now are so eyes wide open on what does my child have? Like we're diagnosing the crap out of children right now. And I think so my son was diagnosed when he was in first grade, and then my daughter's now in first grade and she's getting the test and everything, but we basically know she has it because every child in my family, like me and my brother's kids, are all, you know, in the tribe dyslexia. But, you know, I never kind of grew up with the stigma of like, she's dyslexic or she can't read or anything like that. And I certainly used those gifts to, like, I knew I was really good at art. I knew I was really good at photography. There's certain like gifts that come with dyslexia that I just naturally can do, but I never had that stigma of dyslexia. I just, you know, they said, this isn't a dyslexia discussion, but it was very interesting for me to talk to my son about it. And I went into it with like, this is a huge gift that you have, and was able to frame it in that sort of way of like, you have something very special about you that other people don't have. So much so that my daughter, if her test somehow comes back that she is not dyslexic, she's going to be crushed.
Oh my goodness.
It's going to be terrible. Yeah. Which is just so different.
Yeah.
Way of thinking about it, I guess, but I don't know if I would go back and change it.
Yeah.
And no, you know, I just was like, don't call me. Or like, even still, reading a novel will take me a month, where my sister-in-law can knock one out in 2 days. And I'm just like, I'm enjoying it. I'm doing the voices, you know,
Right.
whatever.
Are you actually doing the voices?
So my reading speed is my exact speaking speed because I'll like still mix up kind of words and stuff. So I have to read like very, very slowly. But it's, you know, I'm just like, I'm soaking in the story.
Soaking it in. Soaking it in.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be enjoyable. You should enjoy it.
Well, I also deeply fall in love with books and stuff. I feel like more deeply than people who can just like burn through them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I just tell myself that, but
no, it's true. It's true. Because you're really you're committing, you know, you're committing to the book.
yeah. Sometimes I just have to put an audio one on, just like, let's crank this. We can't spend our lives trying to make it through this.
Stephen King's got another one. All right. I got like 4 months before the next one comes out. Let's get this through. Blaine mentioned that she is an artist. And I hate to put you on the spot, Kausar.
Are we doing it again?
We're doing it again. You see over Blaine's right shoulder. There's a painting.
Yes, I was already admiring that.
Okay. Scale of 1 to 10.
Oh God.
A 10.
10. All right.
10.
You got a 10.
I love the colors, I
Good.
love the blues, and
Thank
I see like a white face. Like it's really beautiful. Like I would genuinely have that in my home. As you can tell, I love my blues and purples. So
well, it's for sale and you get the guest discount if you ever want.
great.
I feel like
Let's
I
talk.
have, well, I don't know. I've got to at some point show you. There are other ones, or I'll have to reorient my camera.
Blaine keeps saying that she's gonna swap it out every episode with a new painting.
Put a new one there.
And we haven't done it yet. And I think this is like episode 5 or 6. So
yeah, we've yet to see the new.
Gotta get your shit together.
I know.
So Kausar, let me ask you, do you have any other, you mentioned writing. I know you wrote the project we worked on together, Brown Elephant, which was very funny. Do you have other creative outlets that you go to, whether it's reading, singing, could be exercise, whatever? Are there other things that you do to keep your like mind, body, and spirit occupied? Especially, I assume now maybe things are a little leaner because of the SAG strike that's currently underway. What other outlets, if any, do you use to keep like that creative juice and energy flowing in your day-to-day life?
I think that's a real question. I feel like when it comes to like crafts or like painting or just stuff like that, like I'm always down to engage. Like I feel like growing up, it was like I loved like arts and crafts. So whenever it comes to like getting dirty with my hands or something that I could do physically, I'm so for that. But in the past year, like boxing has been a big part of my life too.
Wow.
So I think that's been a big like outlet. Like I can feel the difference in me between my days of when I go to boxing and when I don't go. So I think the physical outlet has been a really big one. And then in terms of like resetting, I've also been like loving family time, like friends and family time, especially kids. I feel like kids are like the best creative outlet ever. And watch me have my own and then be like, I'm so burnt out. But until you become a parent, right? But I think like kids are such a great creative outlet because it's like, yeah, like let's imagine this or let's do this and like let's be silly about this. So I feel like kids in my family have been something I've been really like loving and enjoying too, like whenever I'm really feeling burnt out. So that's been,
and they can become
not being an actual parent myself. So
but you know, kids are down, and like I just recently made my kids go to 3 different Goodwills to buy the elements for like this epic tea party that I wanted to photograph, like you setting up the tea party and then it like kind of falls and then we were like leaving it outside so the elements like are forgotten or whatever. And I'm like, we're gonna do this. And they were like, yeah, we are. I mean, they were like in it. And then I was like, okay, maybe this isn't the craziest, you know, it is, they are nice for if like I told my husband, he'd be like, you did what? Like, how much time did you spend on this? Why are we leaving teapots in the yard or whatever, you know? But kids are good for,
kids,
I'm into it.
They're like down to clown, you know?
Yeah, totally.
They're just like, sure, you're a penguin. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a penguin.
Yeah. Yeah. They're into it.
I have a 4-year-old nephew who is in love with pirate stuff. and he saw this pirate, this skull and crossbones.
Oh
Kurt
God, you
Vonnegut
tell him you're a
tattoo.
pirate?
And I told him I was a pirate. And so we spent an entire day when I was back home in Massachusetts last month in my sister's pool, just hunting for treasure. And then we would like hide the treasure and we wouldn't show the other family members. And he would take, like, his mom bought them this little plastic treasure box with these gold coins in it and like fake jewels. And so he would like take the treasure box and go hide it in the corner of the pool. And he would come like whisper to me, like, this is where I'm putting it. Don't tell anybody. And then he would go hide it. And then he would come back to the pool and then announce in front of everybody, Uncle Tom, I hid it over there so nobody can know, okay? I'm like, dude, you just spoiled the game, bro.
Rule number one of being a pirate. Don't
Yeah.
gold. Yeah.
Indiscretion, man.
Yeah.
You gotta be a little more discreet. But it was really fun. And for that whole afternoon, I was a pirate.
I watched Escape to Witch Mountain with my kids recently. And
Again.
we watched Escape and Return. Have I already told this story on the podcast?
You've mentioned that you love that movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
And I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. So they're like old enough to know.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, I can move things with my mind. And they're like, no, you can't. And there's like this curtain in my room that's under a AC vent, and it does move from time to time. And I was like, look at that curtain. I'm gonna make it move. And they, I mean, probably once a week we'll be somewhere in public and they're like, my mom can move things with her mind. And I'm like, can't do that.
I can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's amazing.
I love it.
I mean, I hope they go into like their whole lives being like, my mom had this special talent.
Right.
Mom,
Quinn brings home his fiance and is like, one thing you need to know about my mom.
That's so funny.
And sometimes they'll like put me on the spot. They're like, Mom, make this move. And I'm like, oh my God, it's not working right now.
Yeah.
I can't pick and choose when it comes. I can't pick and choose when it comes. That's why they call it a gift.
Kids are so great for that. I mean, just.
Yeah, they're like, hey.
But I think I'm more with Kausar, though. Kids are great for that. And then like you as a person can leave. Like, I think that's what I love about kids. Like, I love my niece and nephew so much, but I love the fact that like I go.
You're like, I'm done.
And I don't have to deal with like getting up in the middle of the night because one of them had a nightmare.
It's a job. It's a whole job. But I mean,
it's a whole ass job.
Listen, Tom wants to adopt someone when they're 18. So
more like 24,
more
like post law school.
Right.
Yeah, 24. And then like I'll just sign on to be their beneficiary.
I have nieces and nephews too that I just pump full of sugar. I'm like the yes person. And we actually just got back from the lake with them. And Jimmy was like, so like, how's it going with your nephews or whatever? They're his nephews too. And I'm like, they know that if they want someone to say yes, they come to me. You're bribing them. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. I'm the yes.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I did with Sarah, my producer partner, who we both know, has 3 cats, and I cat sit for her a lot when she goes out of town for work. And her oldest cat, Pepe, knows that I'm the person that will like, give him all the treats in the world, whatever. And so one day she was in Spain for work for like a month, and he got out of the house and he escaped, and he was lost for like 24 hours. And she's in Spain, like freaking out. And so me and a group of friends we would go on like watches. Like someone would be like by the building in case he happened to come by and we could scoop him up. And so I'm going there one night as a friend is leaving, and we see him chasing a stray like 7 houses down.
Wow.
And the friend Claire tries to call to him. And then I go up there and I call to him, and he sees me and he just stops chasing and he just waits for me. And he lets me pick him up, and I bring him home. And I'm like, it's because he knows. He saw me and he was like, I'm going to get whatever the fuck I want out of this guy. So hell yeah, let's do this. And I'm like, because Sarah would always give me crap, like, you're feeding him too many treats, like he's going to get fat. And I'm like, I also saved him. He's also the reason why he's still your cat. So, fair is fair here.
You carrying treats?
Yeah. Got that stuff I'm looking for. Like this fucking stray don't have no treats, man. Like, come on, where are you at, bro? Yeah, good times.
Good times.
Kausar, I want to say it has been an absolute joy
Oh
to
gosh,
speak
thank
with you.
you. Thanks for
Thank you
having
so much
me.
for coming on.
I'm so happy we got to catch up via podcast. And Blaine, it's so good to meet you.
You too.
Anything you want to say to the people before you leave?
What is it? Hide your treasure. That's just make sure you don't tell everyone where you hide your treasure.
Don't tell the rest of your family. Hide your treasure.
Don't tell the
from
rest
your
of your family. Yeah. Use discretion, as Tom said.
Use discretion. Exactly. Thank you again so much. We will link to everything in the show notes, including that program that you mentioned, which we think is great. We would love to support that in any way that we can.
Yes. I will send you the link to that.
Okay, great. So we'll throw that in there as well. And I will hopefully be talking to you soon.
Yes, and thank you so much, y'all. Thanks for having me on. This was so lovely.
Thank you, everyone, once again for listening. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Kausar Mohammed, a great guest. Want to thank Lincoln, our producer, as always, for all the great work that you do. Thank you to Cliff Bond for the music, the intro, the interstitial, the outro. All that stuff is from my brother Cliff, an alumnus of the podcast. And we will include in the show notes all the details if you want to follow Kausar on Instagram, if you want to link to her project that she's doing for other women of color, all that good stuff. We will throw in the chat as well. And then don't forget to rate and review us. Subscribe. Do everything. Do all the stuff. Tell all your friends. Steal your friend's phone. Go to the podcast app. Follow this podcast on their phone. Give this podcast 5 stars on their phone. Write a review impersonating them and saying, "Hi, this is me. This isn't actually her friend. And I personally love this podcast. It's changed my life." And
this
then
is how
on
we
Monday,
build lifelong friendships.
yeah. And then on
an impersonation.
Yeah. And then on Monday, that person will get a notification saying new episode of the Move Me Brightly podcast is out. And she'll be like, "What the hell? What the H? What the frick is this?" And then she'll listen and be like, "Oh my God. I had no idea how much I needed this."
So inspired. I'm so inspired.
Yeah. So just do that with every single person you know, and even strangers. Start pickpocketing friends or people's phones off the sidewalk, but make sure you follow them, follow them down the street. So after you subscribe and rate and review, you can slip the phone back in their pocket, so they'll be none the wiser. I think that is what we wholeheartedly endorse and recommend everybody do.
Correct. If you get arrested, booked, and charged with a crime, please leave us out of it.
Yeah. I mean, everything beyond the initial plan is yours. So you own this. We're just laying out the blueprints here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Everything else is up to you. We hold no culpability at all.
Yeah. As
Thank
we
you
say in the financial industry, this is not financial advice.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's a thing.
As like a stockbroker?
You can't actually give out stock tips or anything legally unless you have all of the certifications for it. So you have to say this is for entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice.
Okay. Well, we will say that pickpocketing idea is for entertainment purposes only. This is not podcast growth advice at all. This is just a thought. It's just a random thought that I had. You know? This is just how we wrap it. It's just what popped into my mind today. And I figured I should share it because that's what we do here.
That's what we do. We're a sharing circle.
Exactly. And make sure you tune in next week. We're going to have a special episode of just Blaine and I, where we're going to shoot the shit.
Yeah.
Do a little recap of how things have gone so far, talk about life, all that fun stuff. So if you like me and Blaine, if you don't give a shit about the guests, which, look, I don't blame you. If you really just want to hear me and Blaine talk, next week is the episode for that.
Yeah, and before that episode, I'm going to find this photo of the shit-covered plane.
Shit-covered plane.
Yeah.
That's going to be the first topic of first order of business.
Yep.
Shit-covered plane.